Hi, everybody. Here's your instructor, Paul, and introduced me. I'm Kyle Treadway. I'm a commercial truck dealer. And thank you. To understand what I do, a couple of things. I want to explain what is the trucking industry, and then I want to explain what truck dealers are, and then I want to talk about careers in our industry. So I've got a handout that's going around right now, and it's my job description. I put it together yesterday because I wanted to kind of share with you in writing what I think my job is. It'd be interesting, I think, after all this, to go back to some of the people that work for me and ask them to write my job description and see if they write down the same words as I do, because it's interesting how sometimes they don't match up. But first of all, what I want to do, let's see, get our slides. Okay. I want to explain to you a couple of things about trucking. First of all, and car dealers and truck dealers. Car dealers sell to the public, to consumers, and to businesses. And commercial truck dealers, we just sell to businesses. And there's a reason why we do that, because anytime we sell to a consumer, it triggers all kinds of laws, like consumer protection, credit notification, et cetera. So we steer clear of selling anything to a consumer. We work very hard to maintain that discipline. Second point is that within trucks, there's a classification, and it's based upon weights, and it's based upon hauling capacity and length. And so they divide up roughly into 8 classes that they're called. And what you're familiar with as pickup trucks are classes 1, 2, and 3. So we don't sell classes 1, 2, and 3. We focus on classes 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And class 8 is the heaviest, the biggest one, what you think of as a semi with 18-wheelers, the enormous trucks that are running up and down the road. That's what we specialize in. And there's a reason why we do that, again, not just for the consumer protection laws, but also class 8, within the classes, there's different regulatory levels that apply. For instance, if you have to drive a class 8 truck, you have to have a commercial driver's license. That's a special license that you qualify for over and above what your normal driver's license is. Classes 4 through 7 are called medium duty. You don't have to have a commercial driver's license to operate those. So there's lots of things, nuances like that differentiate what's going on in our industry. So the big important thing, though, to emphasize here is that we are a B2B. We only sell to businesses. So to advance, I want to give you some fast facts about trucking so that you can kind of understand that's our customer base. And as their fortunes rise and fall, so do our fortunes rise and fall. So it's really important to understand what's going on in their industry. And these statistics are from the American Trucking Association. They're about a year old, but the numbers are roughly applicable today. So there's about just shy of 1 million freight carriers out there in the United States. And they employ 7.65 million people in the industry. A little less than half of those are the drivers. The other half are all the support people that back them up, the dispatchers, the brokers, the maintenance mechanics, and so forth. And they're operating almost 38 million trucks on the highways today. That group represents the medium duty and the heavy duty. That represents about 24% of the trucks that are out there. The other 76% are the pickup trucks that you're all aware of. So what I'm saying is that commercial trucks are, the ratio to consumer trucks is about 1 to 3. So if you get a relative size of what's the population out there. And then in a year's time, they haul over 10.2 billion, with a B, tons of freight. And that represents over 72% of the volume of freight that crosses this country. Now, I defy you to find anything in this room, your clothes, these desks, these lights, anything that didn't ride on the back of a truck. The other 17.5% at some point probably went on a boat or a rail train or an airplane. But that's raw ore, and it gets to the manufacturing site. It's made into steel I-beams. Then it goes on the back of the truck. So everything in its life rides on the back of the truck. It's pretty impressive. And though to haul that tonnage, they've logged more than 300 billion, with a B, miles in 1 year's time. They used up more than 45.5 billion gallons of fuel, whether that was diesel or gas. And they generated economic revenue for the US economy of over $732 billion. So it's one of those industries that's kind of invisible, but kind of huge, really impressive. So I want to share with you some statistics about the industry, again, to kind of flesh out that picture. An important thing to look at here, this represents about a decade's worth of freight volumes. And the bars, each one of those bars represents not raw numbers, but a difference. So if it's above the median line, it represents an increase month over month in the volume of freight that was moved from by the trucking industry. So you can see over 10 years' time, there's some cycles going on right there. You see 3 peaks going on. And that's pretty typical of our industry. There's a rise and there's a fall. And I want you to just memorize that pattern, because the next thing that it translates into is what's going on with what we call the supply-demand base. You can kind of see that it looks almost exactly the same. And the green bars here represent where there's fewer trucks than there is freight. And so that's an environment that our customers are doing really well at. There's a lot of demand, they're making money, they're busy. Anything below the median line is the opposite. There's more trucks than there's freight. They're not busy, they're suffering, they're not buying trucks from me. So that's important for me to keep track of this. And then the third thing is that that translates into how much they charge their customers. So you saw the exact same graph, each one just representing a little slightly different statistic. So everything above the line is they're raising their rates. They're charging more for them to haul potatoes, to haul clothes, to haul computers, what have you. Or if it's below the line, they're actually dropping their prices. And then that finally translates to my world, which is buying and selling trucks. So this one's a little more complicated. The black line represents the number of orders that are coming in, the order intake. And the blue line represents the number of trucks that are actually being manufactured. You notice they don't exactly line up and there's a gap between them. And that's intentional. That means that when there's more orders coming in than we're actually producing, that we're comfortable. That means we've got 6 months, 9 months, 12 months of orders backing up our manufacturing, and we're comfortable and we're happy. Likewise, when it drops down below, you can see that we're making more and we don't have a lot of incoming orders. Well, in this instance, that gap right here, we're catching up. We're placing and building all of the orders here that we couldn't satisfy until COVID hits. And that's what this represents right there is COVID. You can see it's a real sharp drop, but then you see it goes right back up to where it was. And that's where we're at today. That if you order a truck from me today, it's going to take me 18 months to produce it and put it in your hands. So we're fat and happy. We're comfortable. We have long lead times to sell those trucks, and our salespeople are just running to the bank with all their commission checks. Now, I wanted to kind of paint a picture for you. That's the brief introduction of what's going on in trucking. Now let's talk more about kind of my world. In my career, I started work in the 1980s. I tried to characterize each of the decades that I've been in this business. And prior to my coming to work, if you wanted to operate a truck and you wanted to drive commodities across the country, you had to have a federal license with the Interstate Commerce Commission. It's called ICC authority. Well, 1980, President Ronald Reagan is elected, and he says, we're going to get rid of that requirement. Anybody can operate a truck. Anybody can come in and drive cross country and haul goods. And you can imagine what that did. Today, it would be like we said, doctors and lawyers no longer have to have a license. Anybody can practice law or medicine. And there's money to be made, so it just gets flooded. Everybody comes in and the competition kind of drowns everybody else. So it was very disruptive, and a lot of people went out of business. And that led to, in the 1990s, those who were smart enough to figure it out and survive, it changed the nature of how we do business. It was no longer a relationship or brand loyalty kind of business. It turned into what I'm calling commoditization. That means it was all about, what's my truck payment going to be every month? Do I have enough freight to haul it? And am I going to make money? It's all based on the income statement and the balance sheet. That was it. That was the decision maker. And that led to, again, more consolidation. Smart operators bought up the small guys. And so the big guys who used to have at most 50 trucks now have hundreds of trucks. There's fewer of them and they're bigger. So the consolidation kept going until today. There's fleets, there's fewer fleets, and they have thousands of trucks. So my customers buy hundreds of trucks at a time from me. It's very rare that I just sell one truck. The nature of my business changed a lot. In 2010, regulation came back because there were a lot of these large fleets and they were running up and down and it was a free-for-all, but there were concerns about public safety and there were concerns about how it was affecting the economy. All these businesses going bankrupt caused disruption in the economy. So we now have regulations and they're still coming into effect. They're rolling in waves, but there's ones about how many hours can a driver operate a truck? What are the emissions, the particulates in the emissions of the truck? How many miles per gallon does a truck have to achieve, and so on. All of these things that are geared around stabilizing the economy and protecting the public safety. And then in the decade that we're in right now, it's all about standardization. Because we have to comply with all those laws that are ratcheting in, we used to produce what's called a custom truck. No trucks were the same. It depended upon if you were hauling bricks up Harley's Canyon or you were hauling flowers from downtown to Midvale. You wanted a different kind of a truck. The engine, the axle, the length weight, the transmission, everything. Well, that's kind of going to the wayside now. So for us to meet all of those new regulations, it's going to be a cookie cutter. You can only get a certain kind of truck, maybe a handful of different kinds. And I'm sorry, whether you're hauling bricks or flowers, you're going to get the same truck. That's the direction that we're going. And then, of course, what you're all familiar with, the supply chain constraints that we've been having lately, that it's difficult for us to get microchips because each truck has at least 38 microchips in them, and it's hard for us to produce a truck. You have to wait 18 months for one now. So that's dominating our business as well. Okay. So our business, we're what's called a franchise. Not like a McDonald's franchise. It's more like what is technically known as a personal services contract. That means that it's based upon these pair of shoulders here. If I were to get hit by a bus, that contract goes away. So I have a contract with a manufacturer, Kenworth Truck Company, like Ford is a manufacturer of cars. And we have to operate our business in compliance with their standards. They manufacture the vehicles and we're their distribution arm. But we are independently owned and operated. So it's our money, our family's money that's on the line. It pays for the building, the inventories, the training, the tooling, the receivables, everything. That's our money that's at stake. And nationwide, let's see, there's about 5 heavy truck manufacturers in the United States nowadays because they've also had to consolidate. And there's a couple thousand of us franchise truck dealers in the country. And our investment is over $76 trillion. It'd be really hard for 5 manufacturers to come up with $76 trillion. So we're a big part of their system. They don't have to invest that money to make sure that their brand gets out on the road, gets taken care of right. But it's if you study franchises at all in this class or any other class, you'll understand how that dynamic works. There are disruptors to the franchise system. Tesla, you've heard of Teslas. They don't use franchise dealers or personal services contracts. They sell direct to you, the consumer, and they eliminate the middleman. And that's a disruptor in our business model. It's out there, but again, I think right now it's very difficult for a manufacturer to replace that $76 trillion investment that's in place. We've been in business for 78 years, so it takes a long time to build up all that equity in your business. So even though we're not threatened by it today, we're well aware that that model is out there and that we're potentially going to be competing with manufacturers as they go around us to sell direct to the customer. Part of what we offer that they can't offer too is we still emphasize relationship business. Yeah, there's 1 million carriers out there. Yeah, there's 2,000 of us that are selling the trucks, but that still means we rely on repeat business. I'm not just going to sell you 1 truck. I'm going to sell you 200 trucks. So I have to make you happy when I sell you 1 truck so that you'll tell all your friends and you'll come back and buy your next truck from me. So my reputation matters a lot, and that you trust me, and that I am the expert in all things trucking. So as we launch into electric vehicles and automated vehicles, I want to be the guy you come to for answers to those questions. So we think manufacturers also don't have the head start that we do on those relationships and that building of trust within the community. So as your instructor, as Paul said at the beginning, we have grown from the original location that my grandparents started in downtown. It's on the site where the Little America Hotel stands right now. And there were only 3 employees, and they all had the same last name. Today, we have 33 locations. We operate in 10 states. We have 1,300 employees, and our annual revenues are about $650 million. So we cover a lot of bases. We cover a lot of communities. But that's the other point that I wanted to emphasize with you, is that trucking and truck dealers are in every single community in this country. Because again, 72.5% of all commodities run on the back of a truck. We have to be in every single community, in Hawaii, in Alaska, in Florida, and everywhere. So it's a pervasive kind of an industry. So in order to continue to run our business the size that we've become, we have to do a few things to organize ourselves. It's different than when there was grandma and grandpa and my dad, and they could just talk across the desk to each other and make decisions. When we're talking across time zones, we have to have red tape and rules and procedures and policies. And it all starts with what we call our vision, mission, and values. The first one is how we see ourselves, how we identify. The second one is what's our goal? What's our purpose? Why are we in business? And the third one is how are we going to get there? What's our map? How are we going to conduct our business? And so these kinds of statements are really important foundational statements that help guide our operations. And it's impossible to come up with a written policy or procedure for every single circumstance that comes up in your business. So we look to this when those occasions arise. So if I've got a customer that pulls into Pendleton, Oregon at 5 o'clock on Friday, which is the time we close at that store, and he's got a load of oranges and they need to get to Seattle, our employee that's standing there greeting him is going to remember this and say, I guess that means I'm going to stay for another hour and get you taken care of. Because those are one of our values, that we take care of our customers and we go the extra mile. So these kinds of statements declare to our employees, to our customers, to the communities that we're in, to the suppliers that we work with, this is who we are, this is where we're going, this is how we're going to get there. Very important statements. In addition to this, we also do what's called strategic planning. And that's near range planning, where it's roughly a 5-year window. We sit down as a senior management team each year and we talk about where do we want to be 5 years from now. Within these guidelines, within these guardrails, what do we want to do in that 5 years time? Do we want to add more stores? Do we want to hire more employees? Do we want to carry more products? What do we want to do? And then below that, every year, we also do what's called an annual business plan. And that's just it's more granular, gets down to the fine details for every single department in our company. And it instructs those managers, and it's negotiated with them. Here's how many parts we want you to sell. Here's the profit margins we want you to hold. Here's the money that you can have to get that done, to train your people, to buy delivery pickups, what have you. And the point of it all is that you have to have a written plan that everybody buys into and agrees on, so that it's not a tug of war, but you're actually all pulling in the same direction. All those efforts and all that professionalism is going in the same direction. It's really important. So, careers at our company. Effectively, we are 6 businesses under one roof. We have sales departments, parts departments, service departments, leasing departments, rental departments, finance departments, and so on. And so we have people that specialize in each of those areas. And so we hire folks in sales for all departments. We hire people in service, and these are high qualification jobs. For instance, in the service area, we recruit from programs like Salt Lake Community College. They have a diesel tech program, and it's a 1-year certification program. Then we hire those candidates, bring them in-house, and then we put them through our own 4-year training program that we pay for, and they're on salary while they're going through it. And at the end of that, they're considered a journeyman, and they can make pretty good dollars, 6-figure incomes. But my point is that they're highly skilled positions because these technicians are not only mechanically inclined, they also have to do programming, because really commercial trucks today are computers on wheels. That's really what they are. And so that skill set that's required of those service technicians is more than a grease monkey. They have to be highly technical, and they have to have forensic skills because they've got to troubleshoot everything on screen. Parts people, likewise, highly skilled because, as I said earlier, every truck that we make is a custom truck. It's getting less so, but they're all very different. So when you walk into one of our dealerships and you need a headlamp, it's not just grab one off the shelf, there you go, sir. It's what truck is it? What year was it built? Where was it built? What engine spec does it have? And then I will know what the light is that you need. You don't know it. I have to be a professional that knows that entire system and how to navigate it. So parts professionals likewise have to take about a 4-year training program until they become proficient and productive. So, and then we also have all kinds of support folks in each of the divisions. Of course, we have accounting, we have marketing, human resources, information technology, administration, and then we have to have managers to organize and manage it all. So it's a large group, that hence we have 1,300 employees. I also want to show you how we organize that group. So I am the dealer at the top, and then I have 6 people who report to me. So each of those departments have heads of them. So we have a sales director over new truck sales and used truck sales. We have 2 chief operations officers who are over leasing, parts, service, and then geographic districts. And we have a corporate financial officer who supervises a controller and his accounting staff, a credit department, an IT department, and a finance department. And we have an HR director who's over safety, payroll, employee benefits. And finally, we have a communications director who supervises marketing, social media, events, as well as internal communication. Because with a group that large, internal communication is even more important than it used to be. So I've got one of our marketing people with us today in the back of the room. She's new with us, and she's in the social media side of things. So thanks for being with us, Julie. Our business model, as I have said a couple of times, is still relationship-based. It's all about our reputation and getting to know our customers, not just them, but also their business. We have to understand what their needs are and tailor make our equipment, and also the frequency of the services and how they finance their equipment. We have to understand everything about them and become experts on their business to help them succeed. I mentioned also that we are a highly technical industry because computers are updated frequently with software every few months, as well as the hardware. So it's a very challenging industry to become trained in, and you are never ending in your learning curve. It's a very long curve, and it's continuous. It is also a field where there is a lot of job security because despite the advent of the internet, you still have to get oranges from Los Angeles to Chicago, cars from Detroit to Dallas, and software from San Francisco to Seattle. It doesn't get there by itself. So regardless of recession or what's going on in economic booms, garbage still moves, groceries still move, and there's still job security in this field. It's a strong industry. It's also very rewarding. I have to tell you that we were designated as an essential industry during COVID. And you saw those curves and the supply lines and the production lines. We've been very profitable the last couple of years because we've been essential in the national economic fabric. And so it's been very rewarding in that regard, both for our salespeople and for us as a company. And it's impactful because it is pervasive. It's in every single community. In fact, Julie was telling me this morning earlier that if you stop all trucking, let's see, fuel stations would shut down within 4 days. Yeah. Restaurants and other businesses would shut down within 72 hours. And then what was the 4-hour one?
I can't remember, but I remember it was like groceries and restaurants.
Groceries and restaurants, yeah. So it's absolutely critical to the fabric of our national economic fabric. Okay. So we take a lot of pride in where we fit in. And then I wanted to also tell you a little bit about myself. I want to give you a little bit of my background because I understand that's part of what you're here for, is to understand careers and how people reach the positions that they're at. I guess you could call me, some of my history is the prodigal son. So I grew up in this industry, but I left at 17. I went away to school and I got some degrees. I got a bachelor's and a master's and a law degree, and I practiced law for a few years. And then I realized I didn't like it, because law was all about conflict, whether it was creating it or trying to prevent it, but it was all about conflict, and I was very unhappy. So then I called my dad up and said, can I come back to work? And he was gracious enough to take me back in, and I was in my mid-20s at that point. And I found out that I really liked it. So even though I grew up in the industry, I chose it. So, and I think stepping away from it to have that perspective made all the difference, because then I could appreciate what it had and what other fields, professional fields, didn't have. My criteria for my career was I wanted something that was challenging, impactful, and rewarding. And I found all of those in this industry. I didn't, growing up, believe that those were there, but then I learned otherwise. And I also like that my job is to help people find solutions. So if you're a customer who has a job, you want to get those oranges from Los Angeles to Chicago, my job is to help you do it and do it successfully and make money. And I like that. We make a lot of friends with people that way because we help them succeed. So with that, that's kind of my prepared remarks, and I wanted to open it up to questions. Yes, sir.
I do have a question, but you talked about it. I'll still ask it. What would happen if the trucking industry stopped?
What would happen if it stopped?
Yeah, because I need
More information?
more
Okay.
information about that.
Well, let's start with close to home. Those Amazon packages must arrive on your doorstep. You wouldn't get any of those. You would have no food in the grocery stores, no gas in the gas stations, no clothes in the clothing store. It would be a matter of less than a week before everything, all the shelves would be empty. And it was, the statistic was, tell me again, Julie,
For what are you?
for gas stations, for restaurants.
I think they were in less than a week's time. as well, that they would-
So it was 72 hours for gas. It was, I think it was 48 hours for groceries that we would be without. And then it was with 4 hours for probably utilities like electricity and gas, is my recollection.
I do have another couple of questions. What are the biggest challenges in the trucking industry?
I knew that one was going to come up. Right now, number one is hiring people. Like every industry in our economy, finding people. We have a shortage nationwide of service technicians of about 80,000, coast to coast. And that's a problem that happened before COVID. We had that long before that. We're looking for everybody, salespeople, admin people, accountants, and we're struggling to find them. We're competing with other industries for that talent. So that's number one. Number two is the regulatory environment, the ratcheting up of all of the requirements that is disrupting our business and those cycles. So every 4 years, the federal government raises the requirements for fuel economy, for particulate emissions. They also change hours of service for the drivers that operate the vehicles. And those things, you may not get it at first, but what they do is they change the way that our customers buy their trucks and repair their trucks. We're facing one here at the beginning. Next wave is coming in January of 2024. All the things that we have to do to meet those new standards is going to raise the price of a truck another $12,000. So what that means is my customers don't want to pay that extra $12,000. They're going to want to buy them before January of 2024. So that spike in demand is just going to go even higher, and I'm not going to be able to meet it. So that's problem number two, is the technology escalation. And then number three is what I identified earlier about the threats to the franchise system, that going around us as dealers, going direct to businesses to sell equipment. Okay.
I do have another And I have like a couple of questions. How does the trucking industry being interrupted by the technology?
How is it being interrupted by the technology? The costs, which we talked about. There's also the training requirements that come with it. Let me give you an example. Electric vehicles. That's something that our industry is facing, just like with cars. And it's very different in our world because, again, hauling those bricks up Parley's Canyon at 6% grade, it can't run on the same battery that a car runs on. It runs on about 15 of those batteries. And that means there's a lot of electricity flowing through that truck and it's very dangerous. So you have to train that driver. You have to train my technician. You have to train my salesperson. So there's a lot of expense to just running business. And it's not money that I can charge for. It's just more expense to me for that training. Then I also have to put in a charging station. And that a charging station for a truck is about $250,000. There's not a lot of electric trucks running around there that are going to be buying electricity from me for several years. So that's a long lead time till I get that money paid for back. So you can see that technology is expensive for me, not just my customers. Got another question?
I don't know, but give chance to others.
Okay, how about anybody else? Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Would you ever consider going public, like becoming a public traded company?
That's a very good question. There is right now 3 dealerships like us who have done that. And everybody's watching them very, very closely. I'm a skeptic because going public is, instead of borrowing money from the bank, you're borrowing it from the public. And you're accountable to them, and it triggers SEC requirements, publication. So all of your financial information has to become public. All the decisions that you make have to become public. And then also the way you run your business changes because you're accountable to many more shareholders. And if you're a shareholder, you're watching that thing. You want to know every quarter what's it worth and what kind of income is it giving me. You're not thinking about a $250,000 electric charger investment that's going to take 10 years to pay for itself and get back. You may not like that decision as a shareholder. So it changes the whole emphasis on short-term return to long-term return. But there are 3 of them out there right now. Yeah.
Do you mind?
Rush Enterprises
Rush?
is one of them, and they are here in Salt Lake City. And the second one is Premier Truck Group. They are also here in Salt Lake City, so I compete against these guys. And then the third one is not here in Salt Lake, and I can't remember its name, but it's a competitor. It's a Volvo franchise. It's based back east. But I can tell you when I compete against those 2 that are here, and I know they're all focused on the short term, it's an advantage. It's intel that helps me do things differently. And I can go to my customer and say, they're going to not do this and this and this, and I will.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. What else? Yes, ma'am.
I know you kind of briefly talked about it, but is there any way that you could combat like the manufacturer to customer sales instead of like how you were saying they could cut you out, be the middleman? Is there any way you could just prevent that in a sense?
Yes, there's what are called franchise laws, and they differ from state to state. And they're designed to protect the consumer or the customer. The way they work is that they say, some states say, like Utah, you cannot sell direct, you have to go through an automotive dealer to do that. And the reason being is that the premise behind it is, I am a member of this community, so I have a stake in it. I have invested in my real estate. I've invested in my training and my people and what have you. If I'm a manufacturer and I operate direct and I realize I'm not making any money in Utah, I forget Utah. I pull out. The state has absolutely no leverage to stop me from doing that. So you now have a car that you can't get serviced. You can't get repair work. You can't get warranty work on it. So the thought is, if you require it to go through some local ownership, you're protected. And it does differ from state to state, with how far those rules go. Yes.
I Maybe this is more a basic question, but do you guys sell like the truck and trailer or just the trucks?
We just sell the truck, but there are those that do both.
Yes. I was wondering. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
yeah, it's, the reason we don't, you didn't ask this, but the reason we don't do both is, our facilities are very expensive. It cost me about $14 million to build a facility. And a trailer takes up a lot of room. And so I'd have to have even more room. And so that $14 million might double. It's too expensive. And the trailer business, I'd rather just leave it to the trailer guys who can have a facility that's in Grantsville, that they don't have the high prices that I have to pay.
That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Can you project any kind of a timeline or tell us what's happening regulation-wise in terms of converting the truck industry to all electric? Because you know that's coming.
Yes, yes. And actually, I'm a big skeptic. I'm kind of a lone voice in the wilderness in that regard. But I see a long list of roadblocks to that. One is today, a diesel truck costs $160,000. An electric vehicle costs $360,000. And when you're buying 100 of them, you're not as likely to buy electric because that delta, that 200 grand, I can only charge you to haul those oranges the same price regardless of which truck I'm using. So it's really hard to make up that difference. Second problem is the weight. Those 15 batteries weigh a lot. And for every pound of battery, that's one less pound of oranges that I can haul. So I charge less to haul that load of oranges. Third problem, there's a long list here, but I won't go through all of them. Third problem is charging. Today, the best I can tell you is that the range for a charge is 150 miles. That will not get you to St. George. That won't get you to Las Vegas. So there's going to have to be a charging station there. And you're going to have a whole network of them before somebody's going to buy an electric vehicle and use that network. It's a chicken or the egg problem right there. Next one with regard to charging is how long it takes to charge. There's that $250,000 charging station. For me, it'll take 4 hours for you to charge it. Nancy, your husband's a truck driver. For him to sit for 4 hours, that's pretty painful.
Yeah.
That's money out of his pocket. Yeah, so the drivers are not happy, and there's a shortage of drivers in the marketplace. So the list just goes on and on. So how long it's going to happen? The only way it's going to happen is the government's going to force it, and they are. California and all the other states that are aligning up with them, there's about 16 of them, are going to require that by the year 2032, half the trucks that are sold have to be zero emission vehicles, which means probably electric, hydrogen or electric. And the ones who are going to be the first buyers are going to be governments, because they have to, they're required to buy electric vehicles. And then the other ones are going to be large fleets like UPS and FedEx for public relations. They'll buy out of the 5,000 trucks that they run, they'll buy 12 electric vehicles just so they can say, check the box. So there's a lot of problems with it logistically, financially, but it is coming. You're right, it's coming. I think what's going to happen to force it even more is going to be the $160,000 diesel vehicle that I sell is just going to keep going up in price till it reaches that parity with the electric one, and then it'll work. So, yes, sir.
How can you retain your drivers in the trucking industry?
How can you get one?
To attend it.
Well, Salt Lake Community College has a commercial driver's license program that you could take. And it's, I think, about a 3-week program. So it's, you learn all about the unique blind spots behind operating a commercial vehicle. You learn about the hours of service requirements. You learn about the pre-check that you have to do a safety inspection before you climb in and truck every time, and it goes on and on and on. It's about, I think, a 3 or 4 week course. Is that right?
You can be licensed in 6 weeks.
Okay, and it's at the West Point campus.
That's right.
And there's lots of schools all around the country that do that. In fact, The fleets themselves operate training schools. They are so desperate for drivers. There's also a shortage of 80,000 drivers nationwide. Commercial driver's license. And those jobs are improving in pay too. They're reaching up to 6 figures now too, some of them. Good paying jobs.
I'm Nancy, I work in the college and I'm a friend of Kyle's. I came today to watch. And if I had to answer your question from the beginning of class, I would say that a good leader cares about their community. And so I just want to say that Kyle is an extremely great example of good leadership because he cares enough to volunteer at the college. We have an endowment that helps you with your scholarships, right? So we give you scholarship money. If you haven't gotten scholarship money, you have to apply. And Kyle is the chair of our finance committee. So every 2 months, he comes to a meeting and sits and listens to us talk about how we're doing in the marketplace to make sure we have enough money for you. So that's one of the jobs. And then he also serves on our foundation board, introducing us to great people in the community that he has relationships with that we don't, to try to help us raise more money for those scholarships. So I would say a great leader is a community-oriented, generous human, and that's describes Kyle Treadway.
Like, I'm glad you said that. I appreciate the compliment, but that is another important point that leaders, to your question at the beginning of the class, you have to give back to the community because it's the community that builds you up. I mean, you can't just take and take and take. You've got to give back. And that's time, talent, and treasure. It's time like this. It's write checks and so on. It's really important that you give back to the community.
And to your people in your organization as well, not just the outside community.
Yes.
A good leader cares about the people who work for them.
Yep. I think if you look at any successful corporation out there, they always have a charitable arm. That's a very important part of their business model. It's good for public relations. It's good for your people. It's good for your community. Everything about it.
Okay, any more questions for Kyle? Thank you very much, Kyle.